They call it smoking ceremony today. It's not really a ceremony, it's a practice and a part of the process of coming to land. As our life journey goes out every day, we pick up impurities within our soul and within our spirit. And we carry those impurities with us, and they become burdens to us as we travel along. And part of the smoking is to take those impurities out of you and let them float away with the smoke, so that your spirit becomes pure again. And so when you're coming onto country and you're visiting sites such as this, you're coming on country with a pure spirit, because we don't want to take impurities onto sites, because our ancestors are here and their spirits here and they're with us here. They've been walking with us ever since.
This one would have to be the biggest and the most enjoyable, with finding the grooves. Coming across them that day, finding the artefacts, walking up and then finding the grooves was emotional. I got on the phone to my sister to try to explain it. To be back on country and to see something that I've been told about, but to see it for the first time, it's emotional. It's emotional.
We've had little success in getting back to our sites on private property, and unfortunately there's always been this fear from the farmers that we would come in and claim land or do whatever, and we've had a lot of sites destroyed. But, you know, it's not about destroying, it's not about coming and claiming, it's about coming in and reviving our cultural practices and reconnecting with those special places so that we can initiate men and women and we can show them, you know, where their ancestors were. So it really gave us an opportunity to get back out here, touch the stuff that was important. I mean, you had artefacts still sitting in situ, still sitting in the places that they were when they were made. And that was incredible to know that not only were they still here and they were left here, so that again is a really amazing.
It was only about day 2 into the survey where I was looking at a map of the geological outcrops, and this is a really rich and diverse geology in this region. There's a lot of volcanic activity, so there's these amazing outcrops of material. We drove up and hopped out of the car, and a couple of the younger Aboriginal Anawan men walked up here and said, "Oh, well, I think we've got something here."
When we got to this outcrop, it was, how can I say, it was just a very special feeling came across us once we seen a grinding groove on this side and then artefacts scattered all right around the bottom. And then when we finally got to the other side where there's a big cluster of 100 or so individual grooves in this one spot.
What I did notice, one of the younger guys, Colin Ahoy, a local Anawan man, he, you know, there was a real moment of calm and quiet actually. There was the initial excitement that, you know, finding things, and then once we actually kind of that petered out, then the group of boys just just sat on the rock and just looked out of the landscape, and it kind of just, you know, it was such a sense of calm and kind of belonging.
I could see the expressions on some of their faces, and some of them come back after me and gave me some comments, and they was absolutely blown away. For number one, because of access, restricted to access to these sites, not many people know about these sites anymore, and not many people have the privilege of seeing these sites. So for our cousin Robbie, seeing that site for the first day, like, it was unbelievable. It restruck him, it revived his soul. You know, it gives a bit of pride. It's actually cementing, saying you have got a place in this landscape. You know, you have got an identity. So, you know, even though it's a rock that's a grinding groove, it's a part of our identity.
To get that glimpse of how alive this place would have been, you know, back then, would have been real good to see.
We just needed access to these places to discover their exact site and that. With the partnership we have with UPC, we're able to do that, which is great. These grinding grooves are in part for us, for the scientific world, archaeological world. They're part of Australian history, physical history. To us, we have the spiritual side of it, which is a lot harder to prove in scientific terms. Our spiritual connection is our direct link to our past.
You know, one of the great things about coming back onto this country and reviving the culture of this country and reviving the spirit of the sites of this country is we're starting to see those areas a lot clearer now. And when we look across the landscape, I mean, for example, looking east to northeast here, we can identify where what they call now the blue hole, and that was a significant area to us. But further beyond, it was Cathedral Rock. Now, Cathedral Rock also is a significant initiation site. This area along the Salisbury River, or creek line down here, actually goes directly into the Dangesley Falls, now called Dangesley Falls. In that falls country, that was a traditional track down to the Macleay Valley and down to the Dungutty people. And the Dungutty people would walk up that track, and we would then come together for ceremony and come together for trade. So we can actually see along this dreaming track where those significant sites are in respect to this particular site. And we're very fortunate here because there's lots of layers on this particular site. So up on the platform there, it'll give you an example of where the women would have actually been doing ceremony, and that's ceremony with children. It's not ceremony that men can't be part of. So obviously when children are very young, they were taught law and custom right from the get-go. They had to know what they couldn't do within this landscape. They had to be given a totem, and that type of platform allows for that to happen. Then we've got the grinding grooves, and obviously you've got the seed beds over there, and then you've got the axe sharpening. So that would have been a communal site for all the mob to share in. What happened up on this platform is where we were teaching the young ones. So when we teach the young kids, and these are normally kids before they turn 14, is the law and customs of our culture, and especially things like how to respect each other. So what would happen is that all the family would come, male, female, old, young, everyone would come here, and they would actually place boulders in place here. So you would have the formation of the Seven Sisters. The Seven Sisters are the ones that actually gave us law and custom. The Seven Sisters gave you the importance of self, and then you'd go to another part, and again you have to envisage what the Seven Sisters look like. So you've got one stone here, you've got another one over here, and that talked about spirit, your spiritual sense within the landscape. Now, before you actually go through the learnings of self, before you really understand that, you then had to learn about the environment, the animals, the birds, the water. You learned every single thing about how you live in this country and about how we respect each other.
We're thinking that some of these grinding grooves might have been used for grinding food and that, also with axes, with the locations around here. Here's some here now. With the ones over there, there's 4 lots of grinding grooves. These are single ones here, so that's what we're thinking, that the women might have used these. Because there's only 2 here, one there, but over the other side there are 3 and 4 nearly right next to each other. So these ones might have been used for the women, those ones over there might have been used for the men.
So this is a basalt stone that they've come along, they've napped the whole way around it to get the desired teardrop shape. Then the next process in the step is to get it onto the grinding grooves. These are all actual grinding grooves. Each one of the grooves corresponds to a different angle of the rock or the axe blank, what they're going to do. And then they just, basically it's a force forward motion, pull off back. So forward, off, like that. Pressure is only when you're going forward. But yeah, that's what these axe grinding grooves are used for, was to produce these axes.
Well, the thing that amazed me about it was that it was more in the open. Yeah, it was good because again, it sort of backed up or identifying those grinding grooves that our mob was there, you know. Just not grinding grooves, there's scarred trees, there's more evidence of our people being there.
So what we're looking at here today is a scarred tree. This is on a box, which is box and stringy is our 2 most common trees that we scarred. The scar that I think we're looking at today is either 2 options I'll give. It's either a canoe that they've taken out, or it's either a sled, mud sled that they've taken out. So this part of the tree, what you're looking at here now, is what we call the regrowth.
Well, that's why the grinding groove site's so important, because with the axes they needed to have that tool to make such a big scar.
First you go up there, you produce your stone axe, grind it down, you come down here, you trace your line, your shape first, outline it, and then you hit it with the axe to peel off that bark a little bit. Then you put your wedges in behind the bark to hold it into place so it comes off in one big sheet. With the axe grinding groove up there, it would have been an educational centre too, so there would have been, picture back in the days, there would have been young men, young boys around testing trees, working out how axe works, so there would have been hundreds of trees around here scarred.
So it was 84 years ago since the last male initiation took place here. But in June last year we managed to put some young boys through to become men, and that takes a responsibility off of me now, because I'm not the only one surviving today. There are a lot more other men around now who are learning culture and learning the protocol. Initiation is it's like going to school. Well, initiation for us men is the same.
Sadly, we haven't got no initiated women left. The part of initiation is changing your mind and working on your inner self. So for me, not knowing the path of initiation and what it entailed, I was a bit lost. So by going through the initiation, it actually cemented me into my identity and gave me now a stance in the community that I'm obligated to. So it actually gave me a place and made me feel more comfortable with my identity and made me stronger as a person.
I'm actually a great-grandmother now, so I'm really passionate that any of the information that I've been able to been given, that I can share that with my children who actually have worked on this site, my grandchildren who have worked on this site, and eventually my great-grandchildren that can come out and then actually participate in some of those ceremonies. My grandkids are actually going through ceremony now, so that's really important that these places become living places. Eventually those people, those children and grandchildren will then start sharing that knowledge with the wider community. We really have to get out there and teach all people that use this landscape. We can't go back to the days where it's mine or yours, it's ours. And we all have a responsibility to look after it. And you can't do that unless we start sharing the stories around that. The keeping places gives us an opportunity to teach everybody, and not just Aboriginal people. It gives our elders an opportunity to go to a central place with artefacts, with stories that actually go with those artefacts. So the carved tree is really important. The artefacts, the axes that we collected from here, the stone artefacts that we collected from here, all tell a story about what was happening within this landscape. It is a living landscape. And we have to put context to what those items actually meant in the landscape.
When we first rediscovered the tree, it was cut in half, and it was just a shame that this perfectly scarred tree, most likely that looked like a shield, would have been cut in half and destroyed in such a manner. But then there was also this little notch in the side of it where the farmers of that time would have been going to use that tree as a post strainer. And so we found it kind of intriguing in a way that we've got two cultures utilising this one tree, in the sense that we used it, the Inuit people used it first for their scarring to make their shield, and then in another time the farmers came along and needed to use that particular stump use that particular tree as their fence strainer.
We actually chose and nominated to place this in the Culture Centre on display so that we can highlight the movements of that tree and how it was used in this landscape, and actually recycled twice by two different nationalities. So I think that tree is very special.
The way that we lived in a landscape was really passive. So we weren't out there just destroying everything as we walked through the place or we camped in the place. We were living in a place, and we lived sustainably within that landscape. What I see with UPC and the solar farm doing is in the very same manner. It's a passive type of construction. The legacy these guys are going to leave once that solar farm's up and running, it's going to look after everybody in our community, not just the Anaiwan people, and that's going to be a generational gift to our community. So I think that relationship and the way that UPC and the solar farm in particular will operate in this landscape is probably the best thing that could have happened to us.
So I ask that when you're on the land, that you actually see this land for what it really is. You see the beauty around you, and you imagine what it was like before colonisation.
We've been working closely with our Aboriginal partners over the last 3 to 4 years. It's been an incredible journey of learning and experience for our staff and for our consultants that have helped guide us through that process. We've learnt a significant amount about the local heritage, the history of this site, which has helped guide us through the design of the project and certainly the protection of the history and the physical artefacts and heritage items that are left here on the site. We're very proud of the work that we've done here. We're also very cognizant that this is the start of a long journey of working with our Aboriginal partners.
this site will be accessible for the community during the operational phase of the project, which isn't really a common thing. You know, once you go through the land and identify the sites, usually it kind of gets fenced off and the community don't really get to visit again. So the fact that they've committed to allow this as a educational space is great.
We want to be able to now take our kids out there, maybe even teaching students from different schools, just to be able to show how immersed and rich the Aboriginal culture is, the Inuit culture is in the New England tablelands, that if they just look past the school curriculum, that there is a really rich story to be told by the Inuit people and their neighbours.